Thank you for welcoming us to your headphones. I am Fernando.
And I'm Eddie.
And I'm Alex, reviewing Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. And this is The Rollback. Joining us today is Fernie. And if I remember correctly, Fernie, for a year, you watched a movie every week? Is that it?
Every day.
Every day. So he's a bit of an expert on the subject.
365 films. God, I don't know how you found it. How you found the time or the energy.
I was a college student, and I hated college.
Oh, didn't we all? Fernie, I think this is your film, man. I think you should read the synopsis of this, because I know this is basically like your religion.
Alright, short and sweet. With the help of a courageous fellowship of friends and allies, Frodo embarks on a perilous mission to destroy the legendary One Ring. Hunting Frodo are servants of the Dark Lord Sauron, the ring's evil creator. If Sauron reclaims the ring, Middle-earth is doomed, and that's it.
Where did you read that off of?
Off the VHS of when I bought it when I was 7.
That is actually great. That's perfect.
That's beautiful.
By the way, so you never saw it in theaters, like the original, like the very first time it came out?
No, dude, I was 7.
And I don't know.
My parents would never take me to this. When I was a kid, it was whatever they wanted to watch, for the most part, if it was a kid's movie. I saw John Q when I was a kid.
I actually remember watching that one too. By the way, folks, just so you're aware, me and Alejandro, we're cousins. This is Fernie, and we are also
we're all cousins, Dick.
Yeah, the three of us are cousins.
Like, not even questioning it. Like, we're all cousins.
Yeah. Well, did we ever make it clear, Alejandro, that we were cousins before this?
I don't think so. It didn't come up, but now it has in the weirdest way possible, I guess.
Fair. All right, let's jump into this. This film, it's not the first time Lord of the Rings has been made into a film, right? There was like an animated version?
There was an animated version. I can't remember when.
Was that?
It was a while back.
Are we not doing the 1967 version?
Oh, God.
Oh, okay. Look, give me 3 hours and 48 minutes, guys. I'll be right back.
The animated version came out in 1978, which was not a good interpretation of the movie. I mean, of the book.
That's fair. So
I think a solid comparison is like the holiday special to Star Wars. This is to Lord of the Rings.
It's like putting out
a
half-made Justice League and saying it's Justice League.
Oh, God. This is going to be the whole episode, isn't it? Oh, God. Oh, this was a mistake. This was a huge mistake.
Look forward to our Justice League retrospective. Coming soon.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, so the film starts with was it like a prologue? I guess that's what you'd call it?
So the director... Peter Jackson took the prologue from the book and made it into the very beginning of the movie, where it starts off with the creation of all the rings, the rings of man, rings of dwarves, rings of elves.
First question.
Go ahead.
So what were those Were those rings just meant to represent like unity among all the races?
It was power, I believe. It gave each race power.
Very vague.
Now, and the question that I had there, the opening narrator, is that Galadriel? Because I don't believe they ever say it outright. But I thought it was.
Don't. But yeah, it's Galadriel.
Okay. Yeah, because you and I, Eddie, are going to have a lot of questions like this. Just to step back, this is my first time seeing the movie. I've seen the second Hobbit
extended version.
I did. I saw the 3 hour and 48 minute cut. I thought.
Think about how much of a flex that is. Because at the time, New Line Cinema was not a big studio. Still isn't a big studio. It's a very tiny studio, and they shelled out over $250 million to make all 3 movies consecutively from 1997 to 2004, including reshoots.
Wait, it took them 7 years to make this trilogy?
Yeah.
God, well then again, I guess.
Let me rephrase it. From 1997 to 2000, they shot the initial movie. from 2000 to 2003, 2004, they shot reshoots.
Oh, okay, that makes a lot more sense because,
Yeah.
like, damn. But they shot, I
They
guess.
shot them all back to back.
But, like, I guess to jump in real quick, or you know what? I'll save my praise for the practical effects towards the end. All right, so the film opens with the original story of how, the rings were created, and then Saruman creates the one ring to rule them all.
Yeah. He basically creates a ring that's going to make him more powerful than all the other races combined, basically making him able to do whatever he wants.
Right. And just so we're clear, this is Sauron that creates the One Ring, because I think you said Saruman, and that's Count Dooku. That's the other guy.
Gotcha.
No, Saruman is the white wizard who goes bad.
Right, exactly. And Sauron, the weird, like, plate mail guy at the beginning who gets his fingers chopped off, he made the One Ring.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so the ring goes missing for almost 3,000 years, with the exception of Golem?
After the battle for the One Ring, Sauron gets his fingers cut off by the king of Gondor, Isildur.
Yeah.
And he cuts off his fingers, causing Sauron to what everyone thought was to die. But what they didn't know was that Sauron lives because the ring lives. And so that ring was supposed to be destroyed. The Elrond, the leader of the elves, commanded Isildur to destroy it, and Isildur was already infatuated with the ring. It was already speaking to him, and since he had such a weak mind, he succumbed to the ring, and he took it for himself. So he loses it. He gets murdered in an ambush, and then the ring goes missing again. And that's pretty much how the ring makes its way to Hobbiton, to Bilbo. It gets picked up by Gollum, and in the book The Hobbit, that's where you find out how Bilbo gets the ring. He tricks it off of Gollum and keeps it for himself.
So I kind of wanted to get you guys' opinion on this before we start, just as kind of the background. What did you guys think of the elves in this movie? Because half of the notes that I have are, this elf guy is really annoying, or this elf lady is super condescending.
Wait, which one? Galadriel?
Galadriel, Elrond too a bit, just kind of the attitudes of the elves in general.
Yeah, so the elves can come off as dicks, and it's pretty well known. Like that's how they were kind of written in the books. They pretty much think they're the highest forms. They have a lot of resentment towards men because of Isildur. And a lot of them are battle hardened, and they're not as strong as they used to be.
Yeah, that really does come across, because it seems like almost every time that they mention another race, it's like, oh yeah, and they're not as good as us. That race is greedy and fearful and small, unlike us.
They are dicks to pretty much everyone. It seems like throughout the trilogy, the only one that really has a change of heart is Legolas, the one that ends up in the Fellowship.
Right.
Pretty much the only one that will look at Gimli. He'll look at Gimli, and they'll have their own connection. And we'll speak more about that when we get to Return of the King.
No, of course, but even in this movie, I was actually a little bit surprised, and I think this is going to be an ongoing theme for me in this episode, at least. I was surprised that they didn't develop their characters more. I thought that, I'm watching an extended cut of a movie that's kind of infamously long. I thought for sure that I would get to know like a lot about all of these people. But not so much. I feel like a lot of the backstories and the motivations were only as developed as they would have been for a regular length film. I didn't learn that much about Legolas or Gimli, for instance.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think this movie I think it really served as the introduction for all these characters. Not a fleshed out introduction, but uh, a brief to the point. This is who you're getting, but you're going to find out more about them.
So this film it's I guess to absorb all the characters, you do need to watch the entire trilogy to kind of appreciate them. Because yeah, I kind of at the end of this film, I thought, what's the big deal about Aragon, like I don't get it. Like, why do they
Aragorn.
Well, thank you. Like, why do they love
Aragon
so
is the dragon guy.
You don't catch it right away if you're not listening for it. But at the meeting of Elrond, what's his name? Boromir mentions it. He calls Aragorn the King of Gondor, and that's where everyone looks at him like, oh shit, like he's the king. But he's a reluctant king. He doesn't want to take up that mantle because of his heir, of his Isildur. He's afraid like he'll become weak like him.
Right, and I did get that. I was listening kind of closely to the dialogue because there is a lot of political lore, historical lore that gets dropped throughout the movie. For instance, you can definitely see why, if you're paying attention, Aragorn and Boromir have kind of a clash together. Because Boromir, correct me if I'm wrong, his family is the one who's actually been taking care of Gondor.
Yeah, his dad has been taking care of it.
Right, and so you can see why, they have kind of a clash together. But I think the movie does a great job of giving, like, the politics and the history. I mean, Tolkien wrote a whole book, The Silmarillion, about the deep background of his world. So the world building, naturally, is pretty good. But I just meant more about the characters as people. I feel like the film kind of left me dry on that a little bit.
That makes sense. What I want to say, this is a product of the 2000s, because if you think about it, most movies today, they want you to know, like, okay, this is this character, this is him, this is him, this is him, this is him, and they give you like the backstory to each character right away. Mm-hmm. And I think in the 2000s, they were building towards these stories, these big stories. And I want to say it was a product of that time. Not to where they give all the story right away, but they want you to come back for the second movie to learn more.
I definitely agree. It's very interesting to see how Lord of the Rings has impacted other stories and how you can kind of tell that, but also how much of a product of its time it is.
Yeah.
I was curious to know, in the film's editing, some of the cuts that they use and the shots and like these skewed angles, that reminded me very much of 2000 cinema. Like, there are some shots where I could almost think that looks like a Raimi Spider-Man shot, or that looks like it could have been in the original X-Men. Did you guys get that same feeling?
Oh yeah, I got that.
Definitely. But the thing is, it doesn't feel dated, though. It doesn't feel, and I mean dated in a bad way. It doesn't feel, like it's old.
For me, I think it does date the film, as the editing style, particularly, simply because it always caught my eye whenever they were using that tilted camera look, looking up at someone, the classic villain look from like the 60s. To me, that always kind of took me out of the film a little bit. Not to say that I wasn't enjoying myself. I think that the performances in the film really do, entertain you, especially Ian McKellen. What a man, honestly. And speaking of the film being a product of its era, of the 2000s, I was really curious to know what you guys thought of the effects.
Okay, so for me, sorry, Eddie.
No, you're good. You're good. Go on.
The effects for me, they still hold up 100%. I mean, you can see some slight differences, but it's not so noticeable that you're like turned off by it or that's laughable. I mean, for me, this movie was the last movie to integrate really well practical effects, makeup, costumes, and then CGI. And this was all coming from an indie director at the time, Peter Jackson.
Well, it was the last film to integrate them all so well, but I can tell you, I agree with you on this aspect. It did an amazing job of integrating the two. I think the biggest praise that I'll give this film, and maybe the whole trilogy, I've yet to watch the other two, but damn, like the practical effects are amazing. And the CGI, the thing is, I think the CGI is actually the worst part of this film because it's not often noticeable, but you do see it in some of the backgrounds, like especially with today's TVs. But the practical effects are amazing. Like the bad guys in this, the orcs all look like insane. Like, okay, I know where the budget went for this film.
But when you say horrible with the CGI, do you mean horrible like if you're watching Deep Impact?
Oh,
Horrible?
no. Like that's when I say like the CGI is the worst part of this film. Bear in mind that's a very high ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
For me, this film kind of enters into Star Wars prequel territory, wherein they threw a lot of money at it, right? And they had the cutting edge in special effects at the time. But, 15 years on from those films, or in this case, 19 years on from Fellowship, I think that you do start to see the seams. I'm thinking in particular of a couple moments like, Bilbo Baggins in The Land of the Elves, where he's
when he goes nuts, he goes green crazy.
And when he goes meth crazy,
or at the beginning. When Sauron is fighting and he makes some guys fly away from him and they fly straight up. It's not terrible. And I watched this, full disclosure, on a Chromebook. Okay, my modern TV was not helping me whatsoever in finding out the CGI. But for me, there were some moments that were distracting. But there were also a lot of things that I was really impressed by. You can definitely tell the effects. At least I could. For instance, when they were mining for the Uruk-hai to create the birthplaces, you can definitely see that's a model that transitions then into Saruman talking. But I think that it was impressive how they did it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let's push forward. So after the prelude, the prelude
Prologue.
Thank you.
Yep.
So after the prologue, fast forward to about 60 years later, where Bilbo is celebrating his 111th birthday, and damn, does he look spry, but there's a reason for that, isn't there?
Yep, he's on that ring juice. He is on the ever elixir of the ring. And that was kind of shocking, because most people, when they get engulfed by the ring, like Gollum's going to be the main example throughout the trilogy. He looks horrible. He looks like a monster. But Bilbo was able to, although he was obsessed with the ring, he wasn't overtaken by it like Gollum.
Yeah, and that kind of brings me to another question that I had, which is, what exactly are the ring's powers? So at the very beginning, right, Sauron is fighting his army, and he's using magics to kind of destroy people, blow them away. And given how he's like waving his ring arm, I thought it was kind of implied it was the ring that was doing that. But then later we see, when Frodo has it, all it really does is make you turn invisible, and, it gets the ring wraiths after you. But also it gives you kind of youth. I don't think it's ever outlined how the ring works exactly for that.
So when it makes people invisible, it's not really it's invisibility. It's more like an effect. What it's really doing is amplifying its signal to its master.
Does it when he puts on the ring, there's this crazy, almost like shadow effect. I don't want to say shadow realm, but like he's in like a different dimension. Am I right? Or what,
he's being
made into a ring wraith, right?
He's being amplified to Sauron. When he puts on that ring, it's like putting on a beacon, saying "I'm here." And then, so the power of the One Ring is to control all the other rings of power, the ones that were given to men, elves, and dwarves. And it's basically meant to bring them to your will.
So, all right. So Bilbo, he's been sipping on that ring juice, and he is effectively eternal. And that's when we get introduced to, I don't want to say like the main character, but arguably like one of the main characters, Gandalf the Grey.
He's my favorite.
Yeah, one of the main characters.
I'd say I agree. I think actually Gandalf is my favorite. He's coming back to the Shire, and is this the first time he has seen Bilbo since The Hobbit?
I think it might be, but I'm not entirely sure. I don't think so because it seems like Frodo knows a lot more about him, and Frodo wasn't around after uh, when uh, when Bilbo took off for his journey to the Lonely Mountain in The Hobbit.
Yeah, and this may be a product of Peter Jackson being really faithful to Tolkien's writing, but for me, coming into this for the first time, it almost seemed like the story was more about Bilbo. You get to see kind of, he's an old adventurer, etc. I knew that there was, obviously a book called The Hobbit. I knew that there was a whole trilogy. I didn't miss that. But had I not known that, oh no, Frodo is going to be the hero of the story, I would have assumed, I think, that it was going to be Bilbo, that he was going to go out, for one last ride or something like that. It's just strange to me how much focus the movie gives him early on.
And I want to say that's a product of filmmaking at the time, mostly because another example I want to give is the movie Armageddon, how you're not really sure who the main character is until several scenes into the movie. You're shown this one character who sees the asteroid, and then you're shown Eddie Griffin, who's this nonchalant, random character in New York City. Then you're shown Billy Bob Thornton, the head of NASA. You're shown the president, and then you're finally shown the main character, who is Bruce Willis.
It's true.
That makes sense.
I didn't consider that.
Just another way, I guess, that it's a product of filmmaking of that time.
Yeah, I think at this point in filmmaking, they weren't, because I feel like now everyone's so focused on catching that short attention span of the average moviegoer that back then, even in the 2000s, which it's 20 years ago, but it's still the 2000s, you were able to have people's attention spans longer. And now it seems like everything has to be rushed, everything has to be thrown out there right out the bat to get people interested.
What you say kind of rings true to me, especially because it's the 2000s. It's not even that long ago, but it is before the era of the smartphone.
What's called? So Bilbo at his party, he decides to kind of deuces. He wants to go on his last adventure, right? But in doing so, was it like a prior agreement that he made with Gandalf that he decided to leave his ring behind for Frodo? Like for Frodo to, kind of carry the burden?
Yeah, because Gandalf knew that Bilbo wanted to leave, and he assumed that Bilbo was going to leave everything to Frodo. And while Gandalf didn't know that Bilbo had Sauron's ring, he knew he had a ring of magic. So he always assumed that he had something, but it wasn't until Bilbo left and he tried to pick up the ring that he knew like he had the one ring.
Yeah, and I really loved the symbolism of that moment, of this kind of grasping shot of Gandalf's fingers going for the ring. And it kind of, even just the sight of his hand, the way that it's reaching for it, suggests the ring's kind of pull, its lure of power.
Well, even it would tempt even Gandalf, wouldn't it? Like with his power, why doesn't it affect like Frodo? Is it just because he's quote unquote pure at heart? I mean, why doesn't it really have too much of an effect on him?
I want to say it is because he's pure of heart. Because I believe Gollum is a hobbit or hobbit-esque in origin, and you see his origin story in the beginning of Return. And so the ring affected them both very differently. Throughout the movies, you do see the ring take its toll on Frodo, but he's so good-willed and he's so strong internally that he's able to pretty much fight it off for a lot of the movie.
And I really appreciated that because I thought it was sort of symbolism. The Ring of Power, uses that power as a temptation to get people to wield it. And the film kind of establishes that things were meant to endure in the Shire. Things go on for, centuries and generations, but power is fleeting. So for me, it was just fitting thematically that the hobbits would be less interested in that, because Frodo, at least in my viewing of the movie, he wasn't the only one who was sort of disinterested from the ring. You also see Samwise. At no point, I believe, is he tempted. And at the end, even though Frodo has the ring, Samwise doesn't really care about that. He's just trying to help his friend.
He's trying to hold that promise that he made to Gandalf, never leave his side.
Mm-hmm.
The ultimate bro, if you will.
No, the ultimate bro is Sam.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. Like, Sam is the ultimate bro.
Oh, yeah.
Gandalf, this whole film kind of reminded me of a quote, and I only remember hearing the quote from Optimus Prime, but I feel like this quote is very relevant in this. Very rarely does destiny call upon us at a time of our choosing. Kind of like Frodo, he wanted an adventure, but I don't think he was expecting to, hey, fate of the world is in your hands, kid. Good luck.
Yeah, I mean, to be asked to go into the darkest land of them all with an army of 100,000 orcs, I mean, you're asking that of a hobbit, a person who's never left their home.
Yeah, you're really going 0 to 100 there.
And even Sam has that one moment where, and I remember, I think that's one of the few moments from the first time I saw this film in theaters that kind of stuck with me. He says, if I take one step further, it'll be the farthest I've ever gone away from home. And I don't know why, but I remembered that even from when I was a kid in the theater, just thinking, this is a big deal. Again, my dumb ass couldn't really connect the dots, but yeah.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time. But what's funny to me is that when he says that, he's just in the middle of a field. Like, this is just someone's farm that they're in. It's not even particularly momentous in and of itself. To him, it's a big deal. But to the audience, it's just, okay, cross the cornfield, I guess.
And then they're joined, if I'm not mistaken, I think they're being chased. Merry and Pippin kind of just nudge right into them after they're being chased by, I don't know, some farmer, I assume?
Yeah, they're being chased by a farmer because they stole fruits and vegetables from his garden.
And
so they kind of just get stuck in this fellowship, and it's crazy because these characters are so they're so goofy in the beginning, and to see how they end up growing as characters, it's very astonishing.
Agreed. And from there, I believe they're going to Rivendell.
At that point, they're gonna go meet Gandalf at the Prancing Pony. It's a pub and a hotel, if you will.
Gotcha. And
except, of course. Oh, go on.
No, I was gonna say, and then that's when Gandalf
he gets double crossed by his oldest and longest friend, Saruman the Wise.
Yeah, of course, they go to the Prancing Pony, and they find, instead of Gandalf waiting for them, this stranger, who I think that to any person in a modern audience, even if they've never seen the movie before, you recognize that face. You know that this is one of the Fellowship, even though the movie does try to kind of make it seem iffy, like this guy might be a bounty hunter of some sort. You know that this is someone who's going to come back later.
Yeah, at the very least, you're just like, okay, this is going to be a main character.
Exactly. That guy's been staring at you intensely, which the acting in this movie, parts of it are really, really good. Again, I go back to Sir Ian McKellen.
No, and what's even crazier is that Viggo Mortensen, he wasn't even signed on to the movie until 2 days before shooting.
Oh, wow. Damn, that guy must be pissed to have missed
out. I think he did 2 months of training. 2 months of sword training. And Peter Jackson just realized, I need an older actor for this role. So he called up Viggo, and Viggo's 11-year-old son convinced him to do it. And so he signed on.
Wait, Viggo's 11-year-old son convinced him to take that part.
Hey, man, actors do a lot of things for their kids.
No, I'm not saying that, but I'd argue this might be Viggo Mortensen's. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this might be like his greatest part, like the one thing he's known more than anything else, and he just happened to take the part because of his son. Like that's got to say something. That's insane.
And I was telling Alejandro, it's like the case in Back to the Future, where they shot a bunch of scenes with a different lead actor.
And Marty, right? They had some other guy.
Yeah, you could see the scenes on YouTube. They had done the scene with another actor, and they kicked him out.
It wasn't just because they felt like he wasn't gelling, right?
Yeah, that, and they felt that Michael J. Fox was a bigger draw.
He was on some like family sitcom. Anyway, we're getting way off. Fucking
yeah. Okay, so
so Rivendell, Strider, as he's known at the
Prancing Pony.
They have the Dancing Pony.
Prancing Pony.
Dumb son of a bitch.
And look, man, I fully admit I don't know shit when it comes to Lord of the Rings. Like I fucking come to that.
Okay, so the acting in this movie I think is really great in parts. Again, I go back to Sir Ian McKellen. But with Viggo Mortensen, one thing that I kept noticing is that when he isn't actively doing something, he just has this kind of like blank, smoldering stare that he uses as his default expression for anything.
Yeah, he does. I mean, it fits with the character, so.
I'd agree with that.
I mean, it's true. It's just kind of the range of scenes where he's having the exact same face is just odd to me. Like, he uses it in, staring down Boromir, and he also uses it with Arwen too when she's proclaiming her now dying love for him.
Oh yeah.
Is there a reason why? Is she just like, you're brave, you're strong, I love you forever? Or like, did they have like a pre-existing relationship?
So yeah, what they don't show you in the movie is that in the books they had a pre-existing relationship. He had known her all his life. He had grown up in Rivendell.
And that, okay. I think that's implied a little bit with her first intro line, where he's kneeling down, sword appears at his throat, and she says something like, "Oh, a ranger caught unawares." It's very flirty. It's a good intro for a character. It made me interested. Who is this person? But I think that this is probably the biggest knock that I have against the movie. The characterization is a little bit lacking. What you say, Fernie, I would have loved to see that. I would have loved to see, more interactions between the two. I think Arwen's a pretty cool character, and I think that he is as well. But the movie just doesn't really give me too much of that. I wouldn't have known, for instance, that they had known each other all their lives.
Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, it could have done more in introducing these characters more. Yeah, I have no problem with that argument.
Is that scene actually in it when the Nazgul are trying to like hunt them down? They go into the pony, into their hotel, I guess, and start stabbing at the 4 beds, because I legit thought they had died when I saw the first one. I was like, what's happening?
I agree. That was really well set up. And even just the Ringwraith's design in general, especially their horses, I thought was really good for this air of menace.
What I think is crazy, at least for me, is that I was 7 when I bought this movie. I begged my mom to buy me this movie. I just thought the cover looked cool. And I was able to sit down at the age of 7 for a almost 3 hour movie. I remember at the end when it shows them looking at Mount Doom, I'm just like, and it just ends, I'm just like, that's it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I watched a different cut. I think that it might have ended in a slightly different place, but I also was very curious to see, because it just felt like they were cutting in the middle. The whole idea that these are 3 movies made back-to-back with really enough material to be 4 or 5 movies.
What's even crazier is that this was only supposed to be 2 movies.
I was going to say, even I heard that fact. I think, what convinced them to make it 3?
When they went to New Line. When they went to New Line Cinema, New Line Cinema was like, well, isn't there 3 books? There should be 3 movies.
Really? That was enough to convince them, fuck it, let's just go all the way, 3 of them.
Yep. I mean, at the time, Miramax was popping out hits. And so that was one of the first ones they went to. Bob Weinstein, not Harvey. Bob. Bob Weinstein wanted a Hobbit to die. He was very adamant. He was like, I want a Hobbit dead. You can choose the Hobbit, but I want him dead.
Oh God, that's really fucking sad, man.
Weinstein just craves Hobbit blood.
Yeah, and so Peter Jackson packed up his hobbits and tucked them in. He took them to New Line. And it's crazy that New Line gave him such a big budget, especially for the time. And when they weren't popping out hits, like they gave him all this respect and let him do the movie he wanted to do. And that shows in the 4-hour cuts, almost, pretty much all of them are almost 4 hours.
I was gonna say if you watch the extended version of all of these films, it's over 11 hours, like a film.
And the crazy part is that Alejandro knows this. I don't know if have you seen the theatrical version, Alejandro?
No. I only saw one version, and it's the extended cut. That's why before we got on, I was kind of interested. I asked a friend of mine who's really into Lord of the Rings as well, kind of, what's the big difference? What did I get that I would have been lacking?
You're pretty much getting, like, if you're getting a meal, you're getting a ton more sides. You could do without them, but they're delicious.
Makes sense. From what I understand, I know there was one interview I remember watching with Peter Jackson when he was talking about Lord of the Rings, and he mentioned that he actually wanted to do more with the series, but that he wasn't cut off, but it was kind of like realizing there's only so much you can do with modern technology.
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense as to why it took him so long to do The Hobbit. And The Hobbit, it wasn't bad. It was fleshed out too much. And unfortunately, like, that's just the way it happens. But I mean, I think The Hobbit is the perfect allegory, where you look how a movie was made in the 2000s, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and then you see how they try to recreate that in the 2010s with The Hobbit, and it becomes a mess.
But I mean, he only had one book to pull from, though.
That's true. He did only have one book to pull from, but he also had to pull from society. What? Why are you only making 2 movies? We want 3 movies. Why are you using practical effects? CGI is cheaper. Throw in CGI.
Yeah, and that comes to the detriment of the film too. I mean, most famously, right, we have that kind of shot that went viral of Ian McKellen in his garden as Gandalf the Grey, entirely alone in this green kind of a wasteland, weeping, and then there's the accompanying quote that's not why he got into acting.
Yeah, it's the dwarf dinner in the first part. None of the actors were in the same room together, or I think they were all like sometimes in the same room. And yeah, Ian McKellen was alone, and he broke down. He was like, "This is not why I got into acting."
I wonder why Peter Jackson didn't push for it to be more practical. Because I mean, you saw what success that was with J.J. Abrams in the first of the new Star Wars trilogy.
I mean, I would love to know that question, because I mean, I feel like if The Hobbit was made in, let's say, 2007, 2008, it would have had the same sort of feel as the original trilogy. But I mean, it just sucks that it took so long to make, and then it succumbed to the society norm at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it really does change the finished product. For what little reference that I can give, to me, I make no bones about it, Gandalf is one of my favorite parts of this movie. Sir Ian McKellen delivers, in my opinion, the most memorable performance. But I don't remember much at all about the one Hobbit movie that I saw. I remember the dragon, Smaug, but pretty much nothing other than that. It was very forgettable to me.
Yeah, Yeah, I'd say that's a really good assessment of it. I mean, unless you were a fan of Lord of the Rings, for the most part, you're just gonna look at it and you're gonna be like, I mean, I like it because it's Lord of the Rings, but that's pretty much it.
Kind of like with me and Justice League. Like, I like it because it's DC, but I get it. I get it. Uh, so after they meet up with Strider, quote unquote, or Aragon.
Yeah.
Aragon? No, Aragorn.
Yeah.
Aragon is the dragon dude.
Aragorn. There's an
Aragorn.
R.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So after they meet up with Aragorn, they head off to Rivendell, where they're ambushed, and then they're saved by Arwen.
Arwen, yeah.
Eowyn.
Yeah.
Arwen. Yeah, you're right. I was thinking of another character. They get ambushed at Weathertop. That's where Frodo is introduced to his first run-in with the dark powers of Mordor when he gets stabbed by the Witch King.
It's some kind of weird blade that doesn't it like stab his soul or something.
It's a dark magic blade, so it really messes him up in a way that their medicine just can't heal. Which is when Arwen comes in and she takes him to Rivendell to heal him with elvish magic.
Yeah, and to be frank, a little bit surprised at how much attention we're giving to the hobbits, because my eyes were not on them during this scene. Concurrent to him getting stabbed, you have what I would say are two of the strongest character intros of the movie. I mean, Aragorn, going by Strider then, is trying to fight off the ring wraiths. He throws a torch in one's face and slashing with the sword. And then Arwen,
straight in the face.
Exactly. Very memorable moment, let me tell you. And then Arwen, of course, takes them all out as a distraction on her horse,
Yeah, and what's even crazy is that I believe Liv Tyler at the time, so this was 97. I know she was 21 when she did Armageddon, and that was 1998. So she was early 20s doing this movie.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I suppose if you want kind of an immortal look, because the elves go thousands of years and they don't really age, Elrond is supposed to be something like 3,000 and change, but he only looks to be in like his late 30s.
I meant more so in her acting ability, because I thought she actually did really well in this movie, and like not in a way like to pat her on the back, but like, I mean, for someone that's that young, and
definitely.
I don't think she had done many movies up until that point, and her main claim to fame is that her dad is Steven Tyler.
Let's see, I hadn't known that.
Oh, but you didn't know that her dad was the lead singer of Aerosmith?
Yeah, dude.
I didn't know like I had any kids.
That's why Aerosmith is the entire soundtrack.
Hey, we'll just soundtrack
Armageddon.
My daughter on that movie.
Hey, I love Armageddon. That's one of my favorite disaster movies.
It's a really good popcorn film. Okay, so these characters are introduced, and then they go to. They're taken to Rivendell. Frodo has healed, and then they have the big meeting where representatives from seemingly all of the races are showing up, and they're all kind of debating on what to do with the ring, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why? I'm curious though. Why? Maybe this is just convenience sake, or maybe this is me just overly thinking. Why do they all agree for such a small fellowship to take the ring when they could all just summon their armies and escort Frodo to Mordor? Like, why not be like, hey, this is kind of like the entire world is at stake. Why don't we bring all the thousands of warriors that we have at our disposal as like one really badass security detail?
I think that they would have lost in a fair fight. I think that's kind of mentioned. I believe when Boromir basically says that Gondor is pulling the cart for all of you. Doesn't he get a line saying where they basically do all the work and they can't do it alone?
That So Gondor is pulling a lot of the weight at keeping Mordor at bay, and they're not doing that great of a job. Like Mordor is still getting out, but they're pretty much the only line of defense against Mordor. At the time, the elves are already depleted. A lot of the elves are already leaving Middle Earth. They're going to I forget what the island is called, but they're leaving Middle Earth. Because they don't have much power anymore. The dwarves, I think, are also really depleted as well. So the only thing that's really thriving at that point is the kingdom of men. Yeah, and I feel like the fellowship is just a way for them to all have a peace in the matter without one person saying like, "Oh, we did all the work." It was just all a way of them to help. And
I think
it was also because Frodo was the one that wanted to take the ring. Frodo stepped up. Everyone else was fighting over who takes the ring. If you don't recall.
Yeah, and I think that it's also Elrond's kind of roundabout way to make sure that they've got an elf there, just in case the whole Isildur thing happens again.
No, I was just because it was your question, so I was wondering if you had anything to add.
No. No. I got nothing more to add on that topic. I mean, again, if I knew this world, this lore a lot more, I could probably ask more like detailed or intrinsic questions.
Mm-hmm.
But this film is about as much as I know about Lord of the Rings as of right now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but while they're in Rivendell, isn't that when what's the lady who's like gravitated towards the ring and she has this like this?
Oh no, that's later.
Or does that come later?
That's later.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, okay, so Rivendell is a city where you're thinking about it like it's in the forest. It's 2 words. It's something with a C.
Lothlorien. It's the fairest realm of the elves.
Oh.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
And
now I know where we're at. Sorry. Okay, go on.
So one issue that I had with the Rivendell scenes was the fact that they bring back Bilbo at this juncture. And to be honest, I'm not entirely certain what the movie got out of that. He has kind of a brief chat with Frodo. He becomes enamored of the ring again and tries to kind of lunge at it. He gives Frodo a couple of items. But narratively speaking, I think it would have been neater if he had just given the items in the beginning. A sword that's passed down and a coat of armor. That's pretty standard fantasy stuff. I think that it kind of just adds time to have Bilbo here without really advancing the story in any way. They have a chat, but it just ends with Bilbo going, "My dear boy," and then nothing happens.
Well, no, I think Bilbo in that scene kind of serves as a cautionary tale. Like, you see how, because it was pretty obvious at the beginning that Bilbo was like real desperate for the ring, but then you see how insane he is for it to a point where he's willing to take not a swing at, but he's reaching at his nephew.
And to that I would respond, Gollum is the only cautionary tale that anyone will ever need with regard to the ring.
Well, we aren't introduced to Gollum yet.
Yeah, they saved him for the sequel. Like, I think his whole purpose was just to be like, look, like, this can tempt anyone, even your dear
love. Well, that might be a difference between the theatrical and the extended then, because I got Gollum. Gollum was like all throughout the movie for me.
He was throughout the whole film. I mean, he was there through the whole film. His eyes just creep me right the hell out. But it's, damn, the CGI back then, I'm not saying it was bad. Like that was the moment that kind of took me out of it. The first time you see Gollum. Yeah,
I can see that. But I mean, for me, I think Gollum still holds up pretty decently. Not to the point where it stands toe to toe with, like, for example, Caesar in the Planet of the Apes trilogy. But I feel like he serves as a good example of good CGI, at least for back then.
I'd agree. I don't find too much issue with Gollum because I think they kind of know how to shoot him, at least in this movie, or the version that I saw. He's in the dark. He's kind of just out of frame. You see just parts of him, his eyes, etc. He's largely hidden. Which, I mean, I think any low-budget horror movie director could tell you, when you don't have a ton of money to put into something, make it believable, you have to kind of hide it, shoot around it.
Yeah.
Once they leave Rivendell, that's when they set off for the mountains. But because of
Well, they set off in one direction, but then they figure out that that Sauron is watching pretty much the safe route, and so they decide to go through the mountains.
Yeah, and then Saruman.
That's where Saruman. He kind of sabotages them also to try to push them into the direction that he wants them to go.
Yeah, and at that point, also concurrent to this, Gandalf has been locked up kind of in Isengard. He's at the top of the Wizard's Tower.
Oh, yeah.
Saruman has been kind of ragdolling him.
Oh, yeah, so we kind of skipped that part.
We completely gets wrecked.
Yeah, because this was not something I was expecting. I had always thought that Gandalf was, a really powerful character, but we don't see too much of that in Fellowship. We mainly see him, get ragdolled by Saruman, and it's the giant eagle who, in the extended cut at least, just comes absolutely out of nowhere. He sends a bug to go talk to someone, and it's kind of implied that he's asking for escape, but then all of a sudden, Saruman is about to kill him on top of the tower. He jumps onto a giant eagle and gets away.
So even in the theatrical cut, he talks to some sort of insect, and the insect basically relays the message to the eagle, and the eagle helps him out. But I think in the way the wizards work in Lord of the Rings, I want to say Saruman's he's the strongest. He's the strongest wizard out there because he's Saruman the White. Below him is Gandalf. And then below Gandalf, I want to say, is Radagast, which you're introduced to.
Oh, I remember Radagast. I actually liked him.
In The Hobbit.
Interesting. Yeah, so at this point, kind of the fellowship is completed because Gandalf gets back to them. There's the whole nine, and they're made to go down into the mines of Moria.
Yes, they're forced to go down there. Even you see Gandalf was like, dude, we should not be going this direction.
Yeah, like Gandalf knows that something happened there that the others don't. Mainly Gimli, because his cousin Balin is the Lord of Moria.
Yeah, I do have to knock Gandalf about that, because Gimli, not even just once, but 2 or 3 times, says, my cousin is the Lord of Moria, and we're going to get a hero's welcome. You're going to find out what dwarven hospitality is. And all the while, Gandalf, he's really just not preparing him for what he's going to see.
For me, I'm wondering if he knew that they were dead, or if he was worried because he knew how dwarves were, and they were going to continue to dig deep into the earth, and that's how they always got into trouble. Because that's how, because they dug so much gold and jewels, that's why Smaug attacked them.
Oh,
Moria,
and that makes sense now.
Moria, is that the same kingdom that they're fighting for in The Hobbit?
No, that's a different kingdom.
Oh, okay.
No, Moria is Balin's home. It's a mine. Because all dwarves mine, and so I was always curious if Gandalf knew that Balin was dead, or if he just had like a bad feeling because he knew that dwarves would keep digging and digging and digging, and then they find trouble.
He's kind of seen this before, and that makes sense. I just wish that
it was.
I wish. Yeah. I wish there were more information to support that interpretation in the movie. Because that's something really great. But I hadn't. Obviously, the Hobbit movies hadn't even been released, but I hadn't read The Hobbit, which I feel like it definitely. If you're going to come into this for the first time, you want some background information.
Yeah, so they end up going into Moria, and that's where Gimli finds out that pretty much all the dwarves there have been murdered by raiding goblins.
Was it goblins or orcs?
Goblins.
Is there
Yeah.
a difference?
They mention goblins up front, but I think orcs come get them later.
It could be a mixture of both. I want to say goblins are more cave territory.
And getting into Moria kind of brings me into one of the CG sequences that I didn't like as much. I mean, I thought with Gollum, maybe not the best, but they do kind of obscure him a bit. That cave troll, to me, was probably one of the most notable, CG scenes there was.
He reminded me a lot of the same one from Harry Potter. And I'm not saying that Harry Potter had this really high quality CGI, but they both looked pretty similar. They came out around the same time.
Well, I'm happy that troll got work again. It's hard for a troll in the business these days. But
hey, the troll in Lord of the Rings could beat the shit out of the troll from Harry Potter.
I don't know, man. Look, if we're going to go down this road, I can tell you right now, I'm like 99% sure that oh my God, what's his name? Why am I...
Dumbledore.
You don't even know the name.
I know. I kept thinking Gandalf. It's not Gandalf. I'm pretty shut up. No, because you know what? I kept thinking Hermione. No, Ron, no. What's the other one?
Hermione would be dead in 5 seconds in these movies.
No, Hermione would fuck Saruman up, okay?
Oh, I don't know about that.
She'd be looking through a book for a potion, and Saruman would snap his fingers. And
are we talking like year 7 Hermione or year 1 Hermione? Because year
there's
one
a big
Hermione's
difference.
We're talking year 1 because this is 2001.
No.
Okay.
No, but if you take like peak Dumbledore with the power Elder Wand, thank you, versus Gandalf, I'm sorry, he's wrecked. He will be wrecked.
Sure if you take Optimus Prime and toss him into this universe, he'll live.
Yeah. How does Dumbledore versus Magneto do? Because I want to see Ian McKellen again.
And according to J.K. Rowling, Dumbledore has other things on his mind.
Just saying, get wrecked. Anyway, in the Caves of Moria, I thought it was a pretty good action sequence. Like, it was a really good use of practical effects. Like, I didn't feel, CGI army. This felt like a real good hand-to-hand combat fight. And I really liked the sequence.
What, the close quarter fight?
Yeah, the close quarters fight with the trolls, with the cave troll and the orcs.
Yeah. I think a lot of this movie, and this is not just Fellowship by any means. I mean, I talk a lot about this with Marvel movies too, but I think that very often it'll do that thing where it shows an actor swinging a sword or stabbing or whatever it is, and then cut to the guy getting killed. But here, I thought it was very nice that they really seemed to have put thought into the fight choreography.
Oh no, like they were whacking the extras. Like they were actually like hitting them.
Good. Let them suffer for my entertainment.
I have a fun fact for you when we get later into this movie, but you're gonna be mind blown when I tell it to you.
Fair.
For me, that scene, the scene where they're waiting for the goblins to break in, I thought that was a pretty good use of tension because they're just there with their bows drawn. The hobbits are put in this situation where they've never been in a fight before, and now they're being thrust straight into combat.
But not Gimli. Gimli is amped. He wants some revenge.
Gimli wants all the revenge. He wants all the smoke, and he's just like, bring it on.
Definitely. It's really great. I mean, you can see, even in the physicality, he's kind of doing that thing where, that Obi-Wan in episode 1 kind of like bouncing on the ball of his foot, just ready to go at it. That was a really great fight.
Gimli's short. I mean, he's a dwarf. He has to make up for him being short in his physicality.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he might be the one I'd least like to fight. Aragorn definitely number 1, but Gimli's up there because he is fierce. I mean, by no stretch do you think he is a weak link.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Well, just to talk a little bit more about Gimli, I thought his intro was perfect. This goes back to the council at Rivendell.
Yeah.
Straight to the point. Why don't we just destroy the ring now? And tries to smash it with his axe.
Doesn't it destroy the axe?
Yeah,
It does.
destroys his axe.
Oh, Jesus. So this close quarters fight, I mean, you can see the hard work that was put into this. You know, the actors were put through 6 weeks of sword fighting before the film actually before filming actually started.
Yep.
And I think that it's really good with regard to the tension as well, because when Elijah Wood gets stabbed, and this is not something that's common for me, I forgot about the mithril. I forgot that, oh no, he's fine because he has that thing from earlier. He sold it to me, and I thought, okay, well, I guess he's not really in the other two films. I misremembered that.
Yeah, he got stabbed, and it looked pretty convincing, like he was gonna die. I mean, let's just talk about the casting for the Hobbits. Elijah Wood, who was a successful child actor, and a budding adult actor. You got Sean Astin, another child actor who was really great, and then you get two pretty unknowns who play Merry and Pippin. You get Billy Boyd and Dominic Monaghan.
Yeah, I've got no complaints about the Hobbits whatsoever. I think they use Elijah Wood really well in that he's not my favorite character, but I think that if you need to show someone who is a fish out of water that has been thrown way too deep for him, then you put Elijah Wood up there because he's fresh-faced. They give him a soft focus a lot of the time, so it really just shows that, you know, he's a country boy who's never known anything but idle farming, and now 1 million goblins are trying to kill him.
Those numbers are so overwhelming, but that at the point after the close quarters combat is done and they're running, and they get completely surrounded, and then just one roar, one like
yeah,
like, that just
if
makes
that
them go,
roar
oh,
didn't
hell.
happen, they would have been dead.
Exactly, because I was wondering if I was going to be the only one that had this thought. Sauron really should have just let the goblins kill them.
But I won't even think it was Sauron at this point. I think it was the Balrog. Yeah,
the
I think
Balrog.
it was just the Balrog doing Balrog things.
Oh, wow. And that's kind of interesting, too, because, again, I only know tangentially about all of this stuff, but it's really good world building to have Sauron not be the only source of evil. You know, yeah. I thought that, you know, the Balrog is his, kind of everything bad is his, but no, you're saying that this is just a predator.
Yeah.
Honestly, he looks so like insanely built and like a beast. I would like to have seen him be his own villain, like a Darth Maul. He almost feels Darth Maul-esque, that it feels like it's a waste of such a seemingly powerful and such a well-designed beast. This is one moment where the CGI pretty damn good.
Oh yeah, I think his CGI was probably the best, and I feel like they had to make his the best.
I agree. Well, I think that they really did a favor for themselves by having it mostly, when he's on camera, having it just be him. The cave troll, you get a lot of difficulties because it's in, you know, kind of direct lighting, and it's also interacting with a bunch of live action things. The Balrog, not so much, because it can take up the whole frame by itself and just chase them.
Yeah. And then what about that meetup scene between the Balrog and Gandalf? I mean, that's where you finally get the inkling that Gandalf is more powerful than what he lets on to be.
Definitely. I think that in the dialogue between him and Saruman, you almost get the impression that Gandalf is kind of like the screw-up of Isengard by how he's saying, you know, you've been smoking too much of the pipe weed. It's made your mind soft. But when he takes out his sword and he makes himself glow, I thought that was a really great moment.
Yeah, Eddie, he has a sword. What does Dumbledore have?
He'll turn that sword into like sand.
And then he gets murked by a dude with no nose. Get out of here.
No, he gets murked by Snape, a dude who is perpetually blue-balled.
But didn't Voldemort poison him?
Huh?
Didn't Voldemort poison him?
Yeah, the Horcrux.
No, Malfoy poisoned them.
No. The Horcrux
The
did.
Horcrux.
Oh, you're right. I forgot about that. Jesus.
What are you talking about,
Don't
man?
act
I
like
more
you
about
know
your
anything.
Look,
favorite
man, it's been a
movies.
while since I've seen the films, all right? I've been busy for these past, 10 years.
Shame on you.
Shame.
But
But-
yeah, I mean, Dumbledore is. I mean, not Dumbledore. Gandalf is an
Who's representing the
experienced
fandom.
swordsman. He's an experienced wizard, and then you finally get to
Battle-hardened.
see that.
And even before then, I thought that the bridge scene was itself kind of tense, where they're all just trying to get across this chasm, because it really makes you think, these guys are adventurers, some of them are experienced, they're battle-hardened warriors, but yeah, I mean, it's a 10-foot tall chasm. Yeah, how are you going to get past that?
Mm-hmm. And then Gandalf has that scene that probably I'd say is the most iconic scene in the movie, where he starts saying that spell, and he basically makes a protective barrier, not allowing the Balrog to cross.
Yeah, and that's in a movie, it should be said, that is filled with these iconic scenes, and especially scenes that have been made into memes and online jokes. It felt like every 5 minutes or so, I was looking like, oh, hey, that's where that line comes in.
And then
I completely forgot about the one does not simply, meme. I completely forgot about that.
yeah. I mean, how that is surprising that you forgot about that one, because I'd say that one's the most popular one.
Definitely.
Oh, fun fact about that scene is that Sean Bean, the guy who plays Boromir, was actually reading his script throughout that entire scene.
Wait. Did he forget to learn his lines?
I think so, or I mean, he might have been like Marlon Brando, who refused to learn his lines.
Okay.
There is no king in Gondor? Gondor. What kind of dumb name is Gondor? Now, past this, I mean, the Fellowship has lost arguably its most powerful member. They're kind of in a bad way, but things are about to get worse because the elves are going to get involved.
Oh wait, but hold on. I want to talk about my favorite scene.
Oh yes, please.
The scene after Gandalf makes the ultimate sacrifice and takes one for the team and dies so that they can keep going. And they exit Moria. Everyone is emotionally broken because they just saw Gandalf die. They just saw this character they've grown so close with, that's like a father figure to them, die. And the only one that could keep a level head at this point is Aragorn. And he's saying, we have to keep going. Like, these hills are going to be overrun with orcs by nightfall. And I know he doesn't want to keep that mentality, but he knows he has to because Gandalf is gone. So this is when you start seeing Aragorn take shape into a leader. And then you see that one look when Frodo's walking away and Aragorn calls to him, and I swear to God they should have given Elijah Wood the Oscar for that one look he gives the camera when he turns around when Aragorn calls him. Because that look is such a look of lost hope and despair. It says everything you need to say without even him having to say it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that I noticed the look, of course, but I hadn't gotten so much about Aragorn's development there. I think that's really interesting. I look forward to seeing how that's going to play out in these next couple of movies.
It's, I never really considered that moment. It just seemed like really good acting. But when you point it out like that, you're right. You see the pain in him. You see him crying. There was a lot of, I don't want to say underrated acting, because that feels like a cliche at this point. But yeah, I think there was a lot of underrated acting in this film.
For these movies, because it's an ensemble movie, it has so many cast members. I feel like it's really hard for the Academy to distinguish someone in these ensemble movies. So I feel like they don't really try, at least so far. I mean, you see it in other movies, in other ensemble movies where they have done it, like Godfather, for example. They singled out Brando. Godfather Part 2, they singled out Robert De Niro. I mean, you can do it, but I feel like, I don't know, I wonder as to why none of the cast got nominated, at least for this movie. I don't think anyone got nominated. It did get nominated for a bunch of Oscars. I don't think they won any. But
no, they won a bunch of the Oscars, but I don't think they won any for acting. I believe they won.
Oh yeah, you're right. They won 4 Academy Awards out of 13 nominations. But the one that they won the most was for Return of the King.
Yeah, I think that one they won.
11.
Not film of the year. They won. The best film or whatever.
Mm-hmm. But yeah. So after Gandalf dies, they continue on their journey to make their way to Mordor, and they land in Lothlorien, the kingdom of the elves. It's the main kingdom. It's where the highest of the high elves live, and they just seek asylum.
See, and I wish that had been presented more to me in the movie. Even just a line, like, for instance, Elrond telling Legolas, like, you must be wary, Legolas, of our high cousins in the woods, or whatever, something like that. Because I wasn't certain of what the relation of these elves were to the other ones. If anything, if I had to guess, I would have guessed that Elrond ranked above them, that these were, exiles, as it were. I thought that it was kind of strange how they're introduced. It's the Fellowship of the Ring. They're trying to take great evil away from their land, and they're greeted at arrow point. Everyone, and I mean everyone of the Fellowship, gets like an arrow pointed right in their face. It's almost comical how many bows there are. And there are these ominous lines like, "You bring a great evil with you." You would think that they would just want to keep these people on their way.
Yeah, makes sense. I think the only reason that they didn't do that is because they knew that they had made the line that they wanted to speak to Gandalf, because they knew Gandalf.
That's true.
And that's when they find out that Gandalf died.
And I'd be curious, and I'm not asking here just because I don't want to spoil it for myself, as much as you can, spoil a movie that's this famous. But I'm interested to see what happens to Galadriel going forward, because it seems like she knows maybe more than she lets on. She's this very mysterious figure, sort of mercurial in how she seems to be taken with the ring at first, but then she says, "No, I passed the test," that she gave to herself. It's just a very strange scene, at least in the expanded version, between her and Frodo.
Oh yeah, where she goes off and she basically says, like, I'd be a ruler. I'd
be loved by everyone.
But doesn't and again, another quote, doesn't absolute power corrupt absolutely?
No, yeah, she gives a glimpse of herself. It's in the theatrical cut also, that like she looks evil, like straight up evil.
Yeah, she goes kind of mad for a second, but then it switches off so suddenly, and it makes me wonder, just because Frodo is not really making his presence known in this scene. He's got an elf queen in front of him. He doesn't have much to say. It struck me as kind of a strange monologue. I wasn't sure why it was there.
Do any of you guys get the feeling that Frodo is a active protagonist, like that could have been a make or break situation, where he because like going forward, she informs him like, "Hey, you're the only one that can complete this, and BT Dubs, one of your friends, will try to take the ring from you." So Frodo, instead of like, "What should I do?" he kind of takes the initiative in leaving.
Oh, when you're talking about the end.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm fast forwarding a little bit, but I remember like her informing him of that, and I just remember thinking, gee, I wonder who it is, looking over at the
At Boromir.
Boromir.
Yeah, you could.
Well-
They pretty much gave inklings like he's the weakest mentally and in his soul.
And just to kind of bring the film to its climax, where we're going to see the end for Fellowship and then go into the Two Towers. After leaving Lothlorien, basically the Fellowship gets split apart. Frodo has made up his mind that he has to leave, but at the same time, they get attacked by the Uruk-hai.
Yeah.
And here I have to wonder, again, about Galadriel's influence, because it seems like she has a great role in splitting apart the Fellowship by kind of singling out Boromir. And as a matter of fact, the whole reason that the party is split during the attack is because they're looking for Frodo, who is only left because of that warning.
Yeah. She does. I think she plays a role, at least in broadening Frodo's mind, because now he's pretty paranoid, like someone's gonna attack me, and then it does happen. It happens when Boromir finds him in the forest, and he tries to take the ring, and so I think that just exasperated the situation to the point where Frodo was like, she was right, I need to leave. I can't do this with these people. I can't endanger these people. I have to do it myself.
Mm-hmm. I'm Elijah fucking Wood, god damn it, I deserve a solo film.
I
Better
did
than
a
this.
movie with Macaulay Culkin.
So we come into the final action scene, which again I thought was good. I thought that they were able to make it pretty kinetic. That was an issue that I'd had earlier with that horse chase. It seemed like a lot of that they shot it almost as like stills. There wasn't a feeling of like high velocity there. Here it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. I feel like that's one thing, if anything, that I could stand by, is that their action scenes, they got pretty much all of them really right, and they all are pretty rewatchable.
Mm-hmm. Now we come to one of the I think what was meant to be one of the really emotional high points of the film, where Boromir finally dies. And
where he sacrifices himself.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be kind of this redemption. I found myself not feeling too much about it, though, just because, and this goes back to what I've been saying, I don't think that he was developed a whole lot. I think that in his story, you could find a lot of drama there. You know, your king has abandoned you, and your father has been slaving away, trying to help this failed state, be the only one to help against evil. But now, you know, your exiled king is there, and he has the power to help out, but he's not using it, and no one seems to be doing the right thing. I think that could be a very affecting story, but I don't think that they really execute it with Boromir. And so when they actually execute Boromir, I don't feel too much about it.
Yeah, I feel like the emotional aspect of that scene is not so much in Boromir's death, but in the look on Merry and Pippin's face, seeing him die. Mm-hmm. Especially because he died for them.
Well, also they had a little bit of bonding time when he was teaching them how to fight. I kind of like that, but I knew, this will go south real fast.
Mm-hmm. I did like his final words, though. I kind of like that he and Aragorn, it hasn't been given too much attention. A lot of the character stuff hasn't necessarily, but they did have kind of a running rivalry. There was definitely some tension there from like the council onward. And they do manage to kind of patch things up at the end, saying, you know, I would have followed you.
Yeah, and he calls him my king. So that fun fact I wanted to tell you. So the fight that he has with the main Uruk-hai commander, the captain, there's a part where the Uruk-hai pulls out Aragorn's knife from his leg, and he throws it at him. Do y'all remember this scene?
I believe so.
Which scene?
Where the Uruk-hai, or Aragorn is fighting with the Uruk-hai that killed Boromir.
And when he throws his shield and almost kind of beheads him?
Yeah, and Aragorn stabs him in the leg with a knife, and then the Uruk-hai grabs a knife out of his leg and throws it at him. You remember that?
Yeah.
So that was actually a mishap. He actually threw a real knife at Aragorn, and Viggo Mortensen actually blocked it with the sword.
Wow.
Oh, that was very convincing. I wonder what happened to that extra after that.
Well, I mean, his character died, so
Yeah.
I wonder if Viggo Mortensen took some liberties with him after that. Just like, oh, okay, let's do this.
what you figure out about Viggo Mortensen is that he took a lot of damage in each of these movies, and it is insane.
I do wonder about the alternate ending in the universe where that knife hit home. If the Uruk-hai just goes, Sauron wins, and then leaves.
Well,
And
imagine
yeah,
it has to be
like,
a universe where he dies from that wound. I'm sorry, Fernando, go on.
oh well, I was gonna say, and yeah, so like, pretty much the ending of this movie, at least at the end of the battle, Frodo's gone, Sam is gone, the Merry and Pippin were kidnapped by the Uruk-hai. Boromir's dead, and it looks like all hope is lost.
It does set that up very well.
Until two scenes happen. The scene where Sam is following Frodo, and Frodo's like, "Go back, Sam. I mean, I have to do this by myself." And Sam's like, "He's like, well, if you're gonna do this by yourself, I'm going with you." And he was willing to drown.
Yeah, he can't swim.
Yeah, he's like, "I can't swim. Like, I want to drown, like chasing you."
Yeah.
And he says that iconic line. He's like, I promised Gandalf I wouldn't leave you.
That's true.
That was really heartwarming.
And then, and yeah, they have that embrace, and you realize, like, okay, throughout these next two movies, there's gonna be connection between them. And then the other ending, where you see Legolas and Aragorn and Gimli, they see Frodo and Sam on the other side of the river leaving. And at that point, Aragorn kind of takes up that leadership role in a more permanent aspect. And he said, well, Merry and Pippin are still out there. We have to go find them. And he's like, let's go hunt some Uruk-hai.
No, definitely. That was definitely an exciting setup for the next film.
So, I remember thinking, because I know that there's a huge scale for the other two films. I don't remember much of the plots. I just remember certain scenes. I'm like, oh yeah, there's this big battle, and then that fight, and then there's that battle. So essentially, from this point onward, the Lord of the Rings in the next two films kind of follow two adjacent stories. One is like Sam and Frodo in the ring, and on the other side is literally everyone else doing their own thing.
Hey, no spoiler.
Well,
Yeah,
no, the film ends with them going
movie,
two directions.
it follows, yeah, it's following two separate paths.
All right. But about the Fellowship of the Ring, Eddie, throughout the film, I was wondering what you thought about the music.
Oh, that's right. I'm the music guy. Good.
Really? He's the music guy?
I notice the scores a lot more than I think Alejandro does. Just because for me, the sound actually matters to me. Like, it helps to build up the tension in the film. The sound effects were really good, like during the fights and whatnot. But I also really, really enjoyed, particularly the close quarters combat scene. The music just hiked up the tension a lot, especially when it's going up when they're trying to bash through the door.
Mm-hmm.
Just I don't know. As far as the score is concerned, I really liked it. I don't know who worked on it, but damn, they know how to say this. Not just give, I guess, the scene presence, but also build up to it. That's hard. It's easy to just make, soundtrack, let's do this. But to make the music its own thing and add to a scene, that's amazing. That's great.
I'd say it's as iconic as Star Wars' score is, because I mean, Star Wars has always been known for having really amazing scores.
Well, like the dun, da, 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 that scene every time the Fellowship appears, I immediately was like, oh, that's where that's from. Like the Harry Potter one when they first get to the school, or you're right, the Star Wars one, and all that. It is iconic in itself.
and I didn't recognize it, which is why Eddie is the music guy.
All right, so we're pretty much at the ending of this film, and kind of final thoughts. So, Fernie, I don't know if you want to take the first crack at it.
Why rewatching it again and having seen the theatrical cut and the extended cut, my interpretation for the extended cuts is that they are great. The extended cuts are great. They don't change anything of the movie, but they add to it. It's more like special features, in my opinion. That is just great little tidbits. So I feel like the theatrical cut, for me, I give it five stars. I mean, for it being able to make a 7-year-old sit down for almost 3 hours and watch this movie multiple times, and then scribble on his first grade folder a giant battle filled with blood and swords.
Oh God, okay.
That explains a lot, actually.
But no, that is a really good memory though. Like, it meant a lot to you, man.
Yeah, I'd give this movie a 5 out of 5. I feel like this cast is a cast you'll never see again. It also makes me happy. It's always made me happy when casts of like TV shows, long-running TV shows, movies, they're still able to get together today and be friends. Recently, they did a giant Zoom call and they put it on YouTube. So that makes me happy, and even then, like I'd always like kept up on like them, and they've all like pretty much stayed friends after these movies.
It's really nice to hear, actually. I think I like that a lot more than the film. Not to say I didn't enjoy the film, but like that's nice to know that like these actors really did enjoy each other.
Yeah,
it's very wholesome.
I mean, it's floor's your guys.
So I have a memory about this film too. Now, I've never seen it in its entirety before, but I am 90% certain, Fernie, that at one point you brought that VHS over to our grandmother's house, because I distinctly recall a few of us in her room gathered around that old, curved TV that had the VCR player beneath it.
God, I remember that.
I remember the hobbits hiding under the tree in the roots where the ring wraith first gets them. And given that I'm a little bit younger, it didn't grab my attention that much. I went off to like the kitchen to get a piece of bread or something. But regardless, this movie, I had some issues with it. I've gone through them. Some of the action scenes fell flat. Some of the CG fell flat. I think that it does take a little bit of a southern turn after Gandalf steps off the screen. But similarly, it did make me feel good. This was an entertaining movie. I think that it carries with it, for me, the burden of 19 years of hype, because since 2001, I've not seen it, but I've heard so much about Lord of the Rings, and I think that I was expecting this perfect film. And for me, it isn't. I think that you can see the seams. I think that some things could have been done better. I think the characterization could use some work. And I hope, though, that we see that more in future films. This film has made me, just as the end of the movie The Fellowship is, it's made me hopeful for what's to come. I would give it a B.
Huh, solid. Okay. I guess for myself, there was a lot to this film. Bear in mind, I'm a self-proclaimed nerd, but this was never a part of a fan lore that I never really dipped my toes into. I get it. I get why people love this film. I understand the love now. When I was younger, I didn't get it. Like I just did not understand why do people love this so much. But now I kind of do. A lot of deep lore. I mean, my God, Tolkien. Like, he created so much, especially given the time. How much influence, how many things could have really influenced them. Nowadays, we have so much to draw from. Well, anyway, I guess getting into this film, as good as I expected, but not perfect. I would give this a B as well. I would have to agree with Alejandro. It's not my favorite film of all time, but I understand. I respect it at the very least. I am looking forward though to the other two. Genuinely, actually, the last scene where it kind of like fades to black when they're staring at the mountains actually made me want to watch the two towers.
I'd say that's pretty good, fair assessment. Me, I'm more biased because I mean this movie just holds such a big part for me as a kid and even to this day.
I think that's fair, though. I mean, I think we all have those movies that, like, hey, no matter what someone else's opinion is, to us, those films will always be, like, perfect. You know what I mean? Like, we all have that.
I fully anticipate, given what I've heard from friends about the remaining two, it may well be that at the end of the trilogy, at the end of the retrospective, I look back on Fellowship of the Ring in a softer light. You know, I get the soft focus that they put on Elijah Wood so often. It may be that once I come to know these characters a bit more and see more of their experiences, that when I get to go back to the first time and see them younger, I may have, better feelings about the movie. This is just where I'm starting at. If you're listening to us on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe.
If you're listening to us via podcast, please subscribe. We'd greatly appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us. If you'd like to hear more about our thoughts on movies, go to therollback.net. I've been Fernie.
I've been Eddie.
And I've been Alex. And this was The Rollback.